But then there are some Masons that would say, but Freemasonry cannot be a religion because it has no creed, it has no confession of faith, it has no theology, no ritual of worship. Well, we want to take a look at those. And first, can any Mason say that he has no creed? Here's what Henry Wilson Coyle in his Masonic Encyclopedia has to say about that. He says, does Freemasonry have a creed, or tenet, or dogma to which all members must adhere? Does Freemasonry continually teach and insist upon a creed, tenet, and dogma? Does it have meetings characterized by the practice of rites and ceremonies in and by which its creed, tenet, and dogma are illustrated by myths, symbols, and allegories? If Freemasonry were not religion, what would have to be done to make it such? Nothing would be necessary, or at least nothing but to add more of the same. Then Coyle says, that brings us to the real crux of the matter. The difference between a lodge and a church is one of degree and not of kind. Some think because it is not a strong or highly formalized or highly dogmatized religion, such as the Roman Catholic Church, it can be no religion at all. But a church of Friends, Quakers, exhibits even less formality and ritual than does a Masonic Lodge. And then look what Coyle says in conclusion. He says, the fact that Freemasonry is a mild religion does not mean that it is no religion. But can any Mason really say that he has no creed? In reality, no person can become a Mason without a confession of faith in a supreme being. He also must believe in the immortality of the soul, give honorable service to God by practicing the secret arts of Masonry, say prayers to deity, and take oaths of secrecy. Then I want you to notice that Masonic teachings are accepted by Masons as authoritative dogma. That is, principles and instruction taught and held by their own body of believers. And Masonic dogma is not held by all others. That's exactly what dogma is, a distinct set of beliefs. And Masonic dogma is very distinct. Then, how can anyone say Masonry has no theology? Well, the definition of theology, theos, God, plus legion, to speak, is to speak of God. Masonry speaks of God, demands belief in God, informs each candidate that the true name of God has been lost, and then in a later degree reveals that lost name. In the 7th or Royal Arch degree, you can look it up in your manual, the lost name that is given is Jah, Bull, An, the joining of Jehovah, Baal, and Osiris, something that the God of the Bible strictly forbids. But I want you to listen to Webster's dictionary define the word theology and then compare that to Masonry. Webster defines theology as the relationship between God and the universe, a specific form or system as expounded by a particular religion or denomination. Now, does Masonry have its specific form, which clearly spells out exactly how one is to perform their ceremonies? Of course it does. It is the ritual. Then, can any truthful Mason say that Masonry has no ritual of worship? Well, obviously Masonry has 32 degrees of ritual, but is the ritual worship? Now, I want you to look at Webster's dictionary, how he defines the word worship. Webster says worship is defined as a prayer or other rites showing reverence or devotion for a deity, for a God. According to this definition from Webster's, aren't Masons worshiping in every lodge meeting they hold? Then finally we want to ask, how can any Mason say that in the lodge they have no symbols that are religious in the sense of symbols that are found in a church or synagogue? Listen.
The symbols are related to the character of man to man. They are not related to God. We have no symbols that are religious in the sense of symbols in a church.
Well, as worshipful master and conferring those degrees for many years, I didn't look at it that way. I had a chaplain to my left, and every lodge had to be open and closed with prayer. Every lodge had to have a Bible upon the altar of some religion. Every lodge made the candidate obligate himself upon that Bible. Also, in the lodge we have all various things and tools regarding religious worship. We have the plan of salvation through the working tools, the apron that I wear, telling me by my purity, life, and conduct I will gain admission to the celestial lodge above. Over top of my head, the letter G, signifying deity. So as I taught it as a worshipful master, I saw Freemasonry really as having many symbols that would recall it to be a religion. In a church, you have a Bible and maybe a cross. In a Masonic Lodge, you have a Bible, a letter G, and many other symbols that point to me, to religion.